The quiet hero, the late afternoon sun, bathed the small suburban neighborhood in hues of amber and gold. For most, it was an ordinary Sunday in the USA, a day for peace and family. But for James Carter, a retired Army sergeant and father of two, it would become a day that tested his resolve and courage in ways the battlefield never had. James had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, earning medals for bravery under fire. After his honorable discharge, he sought a quiet life, moving to a small town in the Midwest with his wife, Monica, and their 2 children, 14-year-old Malik and 9-year-old Jasmine. A quiet life, however, wasn't always guaranteed when you were a black family in a predominantly white town. The shadow of hate the Carters had experienced whispers, side eyes, and the occasional muttered slur since moving into the neighborhood. But James always taught his kids to rise above it. "People fear what they don't understand," he would say, reminding them of the value of dignity and grace. That evening, as Monica prepared dinner, Malik and Jasmine played basketball in the driveway. James sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, enjoying the sound of their laughter. But peace shattered when a rumble of engines echoed down the street. A group of men on motorcycles rolled into view. 5 in total, clad in leather jackets emblazoned with a skull emblem. James had seen them before. Locals whispered about them, calling them a racist gang that called themselves the Iron Fangs. They had a reputation for intimidation, especially toward anyone who didn't fit their narrow worldview. The bikes slowed as they approached the Carters' home. The leader, a burly man with a shaved head and a menacing grin, revved his engine. The others followed suit, their roaring engines drowning out the sound of Malik and Jasmine's basketball. James stood, his calm demeanor masking the storm building inside. Monica peeked out from the kitchen window, her expression a mix of fear and fury. The gang leader spoke first, his voice loud and taunting. "Hey, soldier boy, thought this was our neighborhood. You lost the line in the sand." James walked down the steps of the porch, his every movement measured and deliberate. He stopped a few feet from the gang, his hands at his sides. "No one's lost here," he said evenly. "This is my home. My family's home." The gang laughed, their voices dripping with contempt. The leader dismounted his bike and took a step closer. "You don't belong here, hero." "Maybe it's time someone reminded you of that." James didn't flinch. His military training had taught him to assess situations quickly, and he knew these men were used to fear giving them power. But James wasn't afraid. Not for himself, anyway. His eyes flicked to Malik and Jasmine, who had retreated to the porch, and to Monica, who stood at the door, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. The leader smirked, mistaking James' silence for hesitation. "What's the matter, soldier? Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you left your bravery back in the sandbox?" James' jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked slowly back toward the house. The gang jeered, mistaking his composure for cowardice. That was their first mistake. The quiet storm. James stepped into the house and returned moments later. This time, he wasn't empty-handed. In his hands was his AR-15, the same weapon he had trained with during his time in the army. It wasn't pointed at anyone yet, but its presence was enough to silence the gang's laughter. The leader's smirk faltered. "Whoa, now. No need to get all crazy," he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. But James could see the fear creeping into his eyes. James didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight of unshakable resolve. "You came here to intimidate my family, to make us feel small. But let me be very clear. I am not afraid of you. You don't scare me, and you will not harm my family. So you can turn those bikes around and leave, or we can see how brave you really are." The gang exchanged uneasy glances. The bravado that had fueled their arrival evaporated in the face of James' unyielding presence. One by one, they mounted their bikes, muttering curses under their breath. The leader lingered, his pride wounded. You think you're a tough guy, huh? This ain't over. James took a step forward, the rifle steady in his hands. Oh, it's over. And if you ever come near my family again, I promise you'll regret it. The leader hesitated, then spat on the ground before revving his engine and speeding off. The others followed, their taillights disappearing into the distance. A new chapter that night, as the family sat around the dinner table. The mood was somber but resolute. Dad, Malik said quietly, were you scared? James looked at his son, his expression softening. Of course I was. Fear isn't a weakness, son. It's what you do in the face of fear that defines you. Malik nodded, his father's words sinking in. Monica reached across the table and took James' hand, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. The Carters knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Prejudice didn't disappear overnight, but they also knew they weren't alone. They had each other, and they had a quiet hero in their corner, a man who had faced the worst humanity had to offer, and stood tall, not just for his country, but for his family. And in that small suburban town, the story of James Carter spread, not just as a tale of courage, but as a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands quietly, unshakable, and resolute.